Hey, my beautiful people. How are you? I hope you're well. So for today's episode, I wanted to talk to you about a unique three-phase cleanse you should learn if you work in womb wellness or feminine health, or if you yourself are working through your own feminine issues and you need support. So basically, after suffering for chronic pain, after nearly 2 decades. Good day, beautiful to see you. Thank you for joining. So after suffering from chronic pain for nearly 2 decades, from roughly the age of 7 to my mid-20s, and this is chronic pain that was also including different levels of abuse, attacks on my femininity, all different kinds of things that some women go through and they don't heal. And then again, after following the birth of my child, I was not just inspired to create this framework, but I was compelled to create it. When I was testing out all of the different things that I had learned, I noticed that I was getting more results on myself when I began combining the different therapies together. When we, do one piece and then we stop, and then we do another piece and then we stop, and you go to see another therapist and then you stop, it kind of works, and then you go to see someone else and it kind of works. You feel as though things are moving, but they're not moving fast enough. The results that I usually hear from people is that they see small changes, but they don't see anything that is consistent enough and it doesn't stick for long enough, right? And so I also noticed that many other women had similar or more complicated problems with no knowledge of how they can help themselves. And so they too felt helpless. So what I've noticed, what I've seen, what I've heard, what I've read, and what I've come to know to be true is that what women really need are natural, non-invasive solutions, right? Why the medical field jumps to hysterectomies is beyond me. It's beyond me, but at the same time, it is not. I recently invited a woman to speak to the participants in my program, and we spoke about the cult of birth bondage. And within this 2-hour workshop where this woman poured her heart into her presentation, we went over the last 500 years, 1,000 to 500 years of the history of women in society, the history of patriarchy, the history of the medical establishment, and how women have been pitted against one another to be able to benefit the function of the medical institution. And so when we talk about why the medical institution jumps to hysterectomies, then we have a better understanding, right? They consider everything to be very medical. It needs to be, go through the protocol. And so, then there's always these financial motivations that are behind it. What we did find out was that birth is actually one of the most lucrative processes, procedures, cesareans, all these interventions are the most lucrative procedures and the most common procedures that the hospitals have. And so it's actually funding a lot of their other categories of hospital care. So this is something that we have to keep in mind, right? And this is why I've heard many other doctors say that non-invasive hormonal care is imperative for women. When I'm researching, when I'm reading these medical papers and these scientific documents, you don't hear it often, but it is there. And this is what doctors are finally beginning to say. Everyone is usually approaching feminine health from a strictly medical and scientific approach. Most of the times when you speak to your naturopathic doctors, they're still coming to you very, from a medical model. And nobody is going deep into the yoni steams or the hands-on self-care. You know what I mean? And if they are, and if they do, they don't know too much about the history or the background or the extra details. What we are seeing is that you have women who have tried and tested something on themselves, have researched a couple of herbs online, a couple of formulations, And, and so they're trying it out on other women, you know what I mean? That, or you're seeing, a crossover of like your naturopathic doctors who are doing the work to prescribe the pills, but then women are also feeling that there's this mind body connection that's missing. And so, like I said, no one is going deep into the yoni steaming or the hands-on care. It's usually that they teach the science, but they don't really teach about what's happening in the body or the deeper transformations that happen for it to stick. Because what I've been noticing is that women will apply the work, they'll do the work for now, they're motivated because they're in communication with their doctors, with their primary caregivers, with their naturopathic physicians, or with the person who taught them the one or two techniques. But then what happens afterwards, right? How do you maintain the transformation? How do you continue that trajectory? Now that you're learning how to set your compass, because your compass isn't set yet, right? You're learning how to turn the dial, but how do you maintain that? And most don't have the experience or the natural or intuitive healing practices to back the science that they're teaching you, or the woo that they're teaching you, okay? And so knowing this is why I created my 3-phase womb cleanse protocol, okay? This work is cyclical. This is something that we need to keep in mind. We are cyclical beings. We spiral through life. Every year we're going through a spiral. It isn't a linear process. I mentioned this in one of my previous episodes, right? We usually tend to think of the year as a beginning and an end, and then we move on, we chuck it to the side and we begin another year. But that's not how we work. We move in spirals. We're constantly rhythmical. This is what we do. And when you realize that, thank you for that, love, when you realize that, and when you enter into natural healing, your healing, when you commit on your healing journey from that perspective of knowing that it's cyclical, as you repeat the process, you begin to refine your experience. That's what happens, right? Because the other piece is, you can't just do something once or twice and it's done. However long you've had an illness, you need to translate this into months, a minimum amount of months, to be able to do this work, to see the change. And really and truly with women, you need at least 3 months. And in natural healing, we always say you need at least 3 times of doing something to see a change, right? And so the work is cyclical. And as you repeat the process, you're refining your experience, right? And you refine your levels of wellness, right? It's like we're layers of an onion that we go deeper into, and we're also creating more layers on top of us in terms of like our identity, reaffirming that, reassuring that, our boundaries, reaffirming that, reassuring that, our immune systems, our cycles. I never thought of that, but you are right. We live in cycles. We're not linear. If we just have to shift. We have to shift how we think about ourselves, right? And even your own understanding. You ever be in a situation and you feel like this in the situation? And if you give yourself enough time to reflect on the process that you've gone through and be honest about your implications in it, your reactions and your responses, and the situation comes back around again, because it does. It may not be with the same people. It may not be in the same circumstances, but there's always something very similar about the situation, the relationship, the job, the environment that you're in, right? Your own understanding begins to increase. And so this is how we're able to justify and recognize the cyclical living, that we go through, right? And so it's important for me to be able to create a safe space, right? This is like paramount when it comes to this kind of work, however it shows up, but it's really important for me to be able to create that safe space for clients so they can feel like they can be vulnerable and open up to the deeper layers of healing. And why do I say this? Because one thing that I've noticed, and I know to be true, is that if you are making appointments with your naturopathic doctor, or you're making an appointment with your primary caregiver, there's usually a time lapse between when you speak to them last and the next time you're going to speak to them. And you don't know what questions are going to come up. And then you don't know when you're actually going to have the next chance to speak to them again. How many times have you tried to call and then you hear the next appointment is not for another month away, another couple of weeks away. And it's like, okay, well, can I send them an email? And you may try to do that, but that doesn't mean that they are going to respond to you because you think that it's important. And so the layers of depth that you are unconsciously like rooting for, you're trying to get to, you're not actually able to, you may make gains, you may make strides and see changes in your own work, because as soon as we do the work, you're motivated and your inspired motivation and the actions that follow will give you results, because we say God doesn't help those who help themselves. The universe won't respond unless you know what I mean? Like unless you do the actions. That is true, and it holds itself to be true. But if you don't have the guidance, right, or you don't have someone to answer and respond to you within that time and within that same rhythm that you're creating, because it's a perpetual rhythm that we're walking in, right? Whether you're off beat or whether you're on beat, we step out of rhythm, we step back into rhythm. Polyrhythms are happening all the time. You know what I mean? Many, many things are happening all the time. I like to give the example of, listening to a song or hearing it in your head, and you stop singing it, and then you pick up and you start singing it again later on, right? And so this is how we work. This is how things are happening for us. And so this is why it's important. I'm very much attuned to this and aware of these levels of rhythms that you're walking through, these layers of understanding, the levels of, refinement process that you go through. And this is why it's important for me to create that safe space, to create a container for you to be able to enter into, for my clients to be able to enter into, so that they feel as though they're able to make progress, but also they can really settle deep into themselves, because the work can get uncomfortable, the work can get difficult, right? And so you need to know that you have the tools, the methods, the processes, and the accountability around you. And so within the process, I want to talk really quickly about these three main phases of the womb cleanse. And so in my phase 1, I call it the map, your map. You learn your map. And the map is spelled MAAP, and it's called the multidimensional awareness and assessment protocol. So it's an awareness protocol and a self-assessment protocol, and it works on multidimensional layers. And when I say we're multidimensional beings, we talk about 3D, right? We talk about width, breadth, and depth, but there's more to us. We're like a prism. We're like a kaleidoscope, you know what I mean? You turn it and it shifts, and every single angle, that 6 degrees, is something else. And so this is where we go through your health history. We look at, who you are, how you've come to where you are. We look at your emotional health history. We look at your vaginal health history. We look at your diet health history. We look at your physical health history. We look at your body map. We look at your spiritual, we look at your energy. We really break down and look at all the different levels of who you are, so that we can get clarity on the symptoms that you're having and a deeper awareness of what's going on. This is important because if you've heard me, if you've listened to my other episodes, you'll know that being aware of what's happening on the other levels is crucial, because they influence your physical health, right? This is where this really separates my work from the batch of everyone else, because they will usually just take what you say at face value and, maybe something is related, but not go too deep in. I'm like a sleuth, I've got my little magnifying glass here. I'm going in, we're going in with a fine tooth comb, and we're figuring out what it is that you're experiencing, so that we can create a proper foundation for you to move forward. Because if you don't know where you're coming from, you can't quite know where you're going. And I'm talking about long-term health that sticks. I'm talking about building new patterns, new habits, new neurological pathways that are going to help you to continue moving towards your North Star, because we're setting your compass. My phase 2 of the program is what I call the feminine flow. You may have heard some of the work out there. I've just made a conglomeration. I've gathered all the information for women to be able to get familiar with your menstrual cycle. Your menstrual cycle it doesn't just start with day 1 and end with your last day of bleeding, right? And then all of a sudden ovulation shows up on day 14, if that's when your ovulation shows up. It's about understanding the best practices for your menstrual cycle, getting that level of awareness of your menstrual cycle. Is it the full 28 days? Do you have a 21-day cycle? Do you have a 57-day cycle? Are you irregular? Why are you irregular? Here are the signs and the symptoms. This is what you can do to bring yourself back into alignment. These are the women that you should hang around. And this is when you should be focusing on the lunar cycle. Why should you focus on? So we look at all these things, documenting your process, documenting your experience, really getting you to develop a level of compassion, awareness, and body autonomy. These pieces are so crucial. They are so crucial. I can tell you the last cohort that I've been running, we're coming actually to the end of it. It's like bittersweet. We have one more week to go. And when we were deep into the feminine flow phase, some of the participants, they were like, oh my goodness, I can't go back now. Like, my boundaries are set. I thought that what I was doing was okay. But now that I've walked through this process, and it isn't just like, okay, I'm showing you something. This is about really keeping you accountable, right? To the actions, to what you're doing, to really paying attention, like what's going on, what's happening with my body, and not pushing things around. Because what happens, then you really learn to honor your body for the sacred vessel that it is, whether you've had children or not, by virtue of having a womb, by virtue of having breasts, by virtue of being born a biological female. Doesn't mean you have to identify as a female, but by virtue of being what I call an egg carrier. And even if you have entered into your second spring or menopause, by virtue of having these biological features, you are privy to this particular rhythm, and stepping into this flow. Remember, I was talking about polyrhythms, right? And polyrhythms mean that there's more than one rhythm that we're working with within our body, within our life, within the planet, all these things, right? And bringing it right back by you stepping into and recognizing this rhythm. This is like your go-to, you know what I mean? It's your constant. We have about 400 menstrual cycles in our lives. If you spend 375 cycles cursing yourself, it's no wonder you never step into the sacredness that you actually contain, that you are, that you really, you know what I mean, embody. And so this is what we are learning in the feminine flow phase: compassion, awareness, and some body autonomy. And then in the third phase of my 3-phase womb cleanse, we enter into the BOM method. I love this method, the BOM method. It's a breast and ovary massage method. And here is where you're actually developing intimacy and trust in your body. Okay, we talk so much about wanting to be present for others, especially as women, especially as mothers. We're the first nurturers, we're the first carers, we're the first givers, the first teachers, we're the first chefs. We're a lot of firsts, you know what I mean? And as I am a doctorate of natural medicine, I am a womb wellness coach, and I am also a birth and postpartum companion / doula, if you want to go there. And I work primarily with postpartum women, so women who have just given birth, and I meet you in your home hours after you've given birth, and sometimes even in the first few days. And what I see oftentimes are these women who are doting after these beautiful newborn babies, and they want to do everything for these babies, but they're not doing enough for themselves. You know, women are so concerned that their breast milk is not coming in and the baby's not drinking, and so they're doing all the pumping, and it's like, ma'am, did you eat? Did you eat today? Did you rest? No, but all of these things need to get done. No, but really and truly they don't. What really needs to happen is you need to be present to yourself, because nobody else is going to do this for you, especially in our Western culture. We do not check for these postpartum mothers. We care about, how it looks as you're pregnant, and talk about, your baby shower, and, get you all hyped up. And then when you give birth, like, nobody's really there. And so you're left to your own devices. And your natural inclination is to care for others. It's not to care for yourselves. So within my work, within my scope as a postpartum companion, within my work as a womb wellness coach, within my work as a scope as a doctorate of natural medicine, and within the program, the self-care and feminine healing, it is about getting women to come back to themselves, to understand that self-care massage is important, to show you the techniques, to put together the rhythms, the order, and how you can integrate this into your life. When do you do it? When should you do it? Should you do it with your yoni steam? When should you, apply this one more than the other? How do you massage your breast? And not just checking for lumps, not just a little too digga thing that they show you, right? And not just like a really quick, rub on the belly that they show you. This is about really stepping into self-care time. And here's where we're learning that self-awareness, like, what's happening to my body? How does my belly look? I've had women come to see me who have had C-sections and have never touched their C-section scar in 30 years. You know what I mean? I've had women, have so much trauma happen to their bodies between, menstruation, childbirthing, and caring for their children, and not experience what it's like, and really go through a grieving process of like, oh my goodness, what have I been doing? You know what I mean? I have women who are, grieving over their bodies, you know what I mean? And apologizing to themselves for the different kinds of abuses they have endured, voluntarily and non-involuntarily. You know what I mean? If you are not safe in your body, if you do not feel at home in your body, right? If you cannot recognize safety and nourishment and nurturing in your body when you close your eyes, if you are not able to feel confident in your body, then how are you able to exude this on the outside? Like, who are you teaching, and what are you teaching them? Right? That level of body autonomy is also incredibly important. I've had women report back to me again. It's like, wow, the conversations that I'm having with my doctors are not the same kinds of conversation I was having before I took your program. When I would come to see the doctor, I would mention a couple of things and I wouldn't be sure and I wouldn't continue with the conversation. But now I'm speaking to my doctors and I have the vocabulary, and my doctors are now responding to me differently and making different kinds of suggestions and referring back to the notes that they have previously from earlier conversations, making the connection, because I'm speaking up for myself, ladies. Body autonomy is the next level, that confidence in knowing what's happening in your body and advocating for it. Because if you can advocate for yourself, nobody's going to do it. They're going to tell you that you belong in this box and this is what you should do. Okay, I'm long past the testing phase with this work. And I have found that these approaches have helped women lead to weight loss. I've had women, do this work and not even do the cleanse yet and lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks. It's like, wow, you are doing this work and you didn't even know that, you were carrying this much weight that was ready to be lost. I've had women have their menstrual pain drop from 9 on 10 down to 2 on 10. I've had women go from complete irregular cycles to regular cycles. I've had women, experience pregnancy. Different cases call for different levels of complex, intervention, but we've seen it. I've seen and listened to higher esteem. I have women coming on my calls. I'm like, damn, sis, between last week and this week, your voice is completely different. More confidence in themselves and what they're doing to pursue. I've had women, have more trust in themselves, speaking up with themselves, as I said, more conversation with their doctors. I've heard women talk about changing their whole career path after doing this work and starting to pursue the things that really speak to their soul rather than the things that speak to their immediate needs. So I just wanted to get on here and talk about this and let you all know that this is real. This is real. It's palpable work. This is not just the woo-woo stuff that you're seeing online. I'm not somebody who, heard about it and just started putting together these, apparatuses and start working on you just because I can't, just because I'm interested in it. Like I've studied this. I've studied thousands of hours in natural medicine. I have my diplomas, I have my accreditations. I was having a conversation with someone the other day and, she had gone to see someone who, knows or had heard about the work and read a couple of books and did some work on her. And she had very adverse effects based off of the work that this woman did. And she also went to see a naturopathic doctor and was getting some results, but still felt as though there was something missing. This is where I bridge the two together because I know what I'm talking about. I know what I know. I've seen it. I've lived it for myself. I've seen it in my clients. And this is why I was compelled to create the Womb Cleanse Protocol. This is why I was compelled to create the self-care and feminine healing training. And so if you, feel a strong desire, if any of or all of the above results are things that you desire to experience in your life, I encourage you to click on the link in my bio. I encourage you to submit an application to have a suitability call with me, and let's talk about where you are on your path, where you are on your journey. Are you dealing with fibroids that are growing? Are you dealing with cystic ovaries? Are you dealing with polycystic ovarian syndrome? You know what I mean? Do you have, inconclusive diagnoses, inconclusive tests, inconclusive conversations with your doctor? Are you trying to get pregnant? Have you been suffering with infertility? Are you trying to, prepare yourself for another round of IVF? Like, what is it that you need on your womb healing journey? What is it that you are striving to achieve? Click on the link in my bio. Let's have a conversation. We start as soon as you're ready, and I would absolutely love to support you on your process. Be well. Take care.